Let me introduce the concept of anarchy by a prominent scholar. Professor Kenneth Waltz once stated that in the state of nature, in international relations, each country is the final judge of its own cause. In other words, each state has the every right to determine its own policies. For example, country A has a right to make any allies or close relationship with country B, or unfriendly or hostile relationship with country B. Each state has the own right to judge. The final judge is the state's government that makes the final judge of its own policies or any diplomatic relations or decisions. So at any state, at anytime it wants to use force to implement its policies, use force. Since it's an anarchy, and also there's no such a thing like central government, each state can use force to implement its policies or maximize its national interest in the state of anarchy. So in this context, state has all the rights to determine their national interests, and to choose the means to maximize national interests. In other words, states choose the priority or ranking of national interests. First, security, for example, security first, national security. Second, or economic development, or trade. Or third, people's welfare. Or fourth, education, something like that. So states has all right to determine or condition they make the priority of national interests. And choose the means, choose the ways and means to maximize national interest, including physical or non-physical means. Non-physical means illustrates peaceful diplomacy. In order to maximize its own national interests, the state can employ diplomatic policy means, or sometimes physical means, confrontation with physical violence, or threatening with conventional weapons. Conventional weapons means the rifles, cannons, and tanks and fighters, or sometimes tactical or strategic weapons. Tactical and strategic weapons can include nuclear warheads. These are non-conventional weapons. So states has own rights to choose these conventional weapons or non-conventional or strategic weapons in order to solve the problems or implement its own policies or maximize its national interests. Okay, the question is, in that case, which or who determines our national interests? What could be your country's national interest? Democracy? Or economic development? Or freedom of press? Or human rights? Perhaps your country has its own national interests. But the thing is that who determined those national interests? You? People? or the government or politicians? Can you answer this question? Do you believe that in the state of democracy, you have elections every 4 or 5 years for presidents or prime minister? And with the vote and election of your own president, you think that you determined your country's national interest? My answer is no. My answer is no. I think that the top decision makers in the government are making national interests in terms of his or their own ideology. If he or she is a conservative, probably national security and human rights has the priority in their decision makings. But if you are liberal, probably the rights of labor has the top priority. So in terms of the what kind of ideology or philosophy the top decision maker has, your national interest could be changing. So probably the top decision makers in your country choose this national interest over other interests and manipulate the people for their purposes. So we have a myth that people determines national interests, but in democracies. But that is not true. That is not true. Another fundamental question is this. If anarchy means the state of war, the question is, why are we still alive? Right? After the end of World War II, in 1945, there were no major or total wars in the world. Of course, there were many regional conflicts and confrontations and disputes in the world, but no major wars. Well, there's no Third World War. But if we apply the theory of state of war or anarchy, all the countries are in the state of wars or physical wars against each other. But why not? Why are we still alive? This is a very important question to answer. Unlike the theoretical application, in reality, anarchy does never mean that all the countries are in the state of constant war. Theoretically, we are living in the state of anarchy, but that does not mean that we are in the state of constant war. Then another question rises. How do we live with anarchy? Obviously, people find a certain wisdom to live with anarchy after 1945, right? We found some wisdom. We try to restrict the levels of tensions, certainly between the former two superpowers, the US and the former Soviet Union. They have managed the increasing tensions between them without using strategic or tactical weapons against each other. What about the weaker countries? They managed also. They have conflicts with each other, but their conflicts did not lead to a major war or a big conflict that would lead to a major war.